Do you hear the grasshopper, which is at your feet?
Hello, Jim Matthews, glasshopper.com. I set out to learn a new technique this month. One firing deep compositions using frit as fill. The two primary challenges are minimizing bubbles and keeping the design elements from deforming. To create depth, we overlap elements in a composition, building successive levels of space that need to be filled. Clear frit is the go-to fill and also the source of both challenges. Frit unavoidably brings air along with it, much in the same way I bring skin along with me, and air begets bubbles. Additionally, as glass melts, it flows, changing its shape as it seeks to fill any air pockets around it. So air is really the problem, and with frit, or any glass fragment, there's no getting away from it. Air surrounds the glass, clinging to its surface. Larger, thicker fragments boast more glass than surface area, so relatively less air and fewer bubbles. Here I've filled 5 cavities to the same level with 5 particle sizes of frit: powder, fine, medium, big medium, and coarse. Theoretically, the smaller the particle size, the more air we'll have in the resulting glass heart. To minimize bubbles, artists working in cast glass use the largest, thickest chunks of glass their projects will accommodate, and manufacturers sell super thick glass products to meet their needs. Here's our heart made from clear powder. So foamy with air, it's pretty much opaque. And here's the fine particle size. A little better, but not much. Here's medium. We have translucency, but still far from clarity. Big medium, better. And coarse, clearly the most bubble-free of all. So what I sought to do was create a design of overlapping layers of simple 3-petal flowers and assorted foliage, leveling each layer with clear frit. And this is not a new technique, but I'm exploring ways to minimize bubbles and retain the shape of design elements. I use this 6-inch dam mold, very handy for projects like this, because there's no need to build a dam every time. I found it to be a real good idea to make my flowers separately rather than try to assemble them in the mold. The petals are small rectangles. I cut mine 3/4 by 7/8 inch, then nipped off 2 corners and did some very quick rounding. Grinding is optional. To secure them, I used centers of pressed frit. These are small pieces of coarse frit pressed between 2 shells to make flat little discs. Small pebbles would work well too. These will fire low, just a tack, to bond the pieces. The foliage I kept very simple. Keep in mind, this project is more of a study than an art piece. I had a momentary mystery on my hands with this batch of flowers. 2 jumpers, here and here. Have you run into this? Where small pieces seem to jump during firing? I think what they actually do is float on a puddle of hairspray as it reliquefies and bubbles in the heat. But I didn't use any adhesive on these. A return to my shelfie reveals simply that I failed to take a close look before closing the kiln. On the next batch, I varied the petal colors a little and accented with a soft yellow powder blend. Firing paper in the bottom of the mold is totally optional. I prefer the texture of paper to the texture of boron, and I want some background color, so I'll use a square of pale blue on the bottom. Now, when you spread clear frit onto a transparent color, it creates a mottled look, doesn't it? I want to avoid that this time, so following a light sprinkling of bubble insurance, I'm going to cover my blue with a square of thin clear. Clear won't mottle clear, will it? And now I can place my first layer of design elements. The spaces between these elements are what I'll need to fill with clear frit. We'll give this hairspray some time to dry, then come back and get that started. We've seen that smaller frit particle sizes create more bubbles, sometimes enough to ruin a piece, but there's a problem with larger frit sizes too. Up against the edges of design elements, they cause this serrated effect. So what I'm going to try here is to surround the elements with a buildup of medium frit, speculating that the smaller particles will create a less distracting serrated effect. Then I'll use coarse frit to fill the larger open spaces and hope the compromise will achieve a higher quality look. I'm trying to enclose all of the edges of the elements with these smaller particles. It is painstaking, I admit. I used a faster way on the top level, and we'll see that in a minute. Now filling the open spaces with the larger pieces. I want an even layer of glass across the level. Okay, completed lower layer about to be overlaid by a similar layer on top. And now we confront another headache of larger frit pieces. They sculpt and disfigure the smooth surfaces of lower level elements. My idea to prevent this is similar to what we did to keep the very bottom blue sheet from modeling. Protect with a shield of clear thin glass. I cut 3/4 inch thin clear squares and nipped off 3 corners. For the leaves, I just copied the shape. No points for precision here. It'll all disappear in the clear. And with a dab of aloe for security, I created a frit-proof barrier on the petals and leaves. Little fine tuning of our fill here, and we can start on level 2. So this time, instead of meticulously surrounding every edge of every element with medium frit, I began by filling loosely with coarse. Then I went around the element edges with a thin, flat blade and created a little gap that I could quickly and easily fill with medium frit. Again, some final fine-tuning and a colossal cross of the fingers. Well, let's see what we can learn. The serrating of the top level elements is less severe, but it's still bothersome. The edges of the lower level elements are definitely smoother. Look at this leaf. That's as good as I could ever hope for. Here it is, dressed and ready. I suspect that I was more careful and thorough on the first layer. I got tired, less patient, and less exacting on top. In fact, I know I did. And look at this. This is frit on top of a petal that's pitted the surface. Now here's the shelfie, and this is the petal we're looking at. And I see no sign of any wayward frit on it. Floaters? I guess so. Makes you want to go back to needlepoint. Our frit shields seem to have worked. Again, looking at the lower elements. Remember how bad the sculpting was before? Overall, it's really a pretty nice looking piece. I'm very pleased with the bubble reduction I was able to achieve, and I'm not giving up on the distortion dilemma. Meanwhile, it's your turn. Go forth and fuse and see what more you can learn. I thank you so much.